Billionaire CEO surprised everyone by asking Janitor for financial wisdom. Her incredible response changed everything. In the midst of New York's glimmering skyline, Thomas Winslow leaned against the wall of his glass office, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The latest quarterly report nagged at him like a relentless itch. Profits were dwindling, and whispers of a financial collapse loomed over his empire like thunderclouds threatening a storm. In that polished hall, where ideals were traded like commodities, he felt the sharp edge of loneliness. Doug, his CFO, had just left after delivering bad news, and as the fluorescent lights flickered, he recognized the hollow sounds of applause echoing through the corridors were devoid of any real warmth. Was this what he had built, an empire where recognition meant nothing when the faces behind it were mere shadows? As he paced the gleaming floors, his thoughts turned toward the very people who kept this skyscraper standing. They were the unseen workers, the janitors like Maria Garcia, whose hands scrubbed the same halls where deals were struck and fortunes made. He'd hear her chatter with her colleagues over coffee breaks, tales of her frugal budgeting and the determination of a single mom battling headwinds to keep her daughter's dreams afloat. While Thomas had mastered the art of numbers, he felt a twinge of embarrassment as he realized how disconnected he was from their struggles. One fateful afternoon, his frustration reached a fever pitch. As he stormed past a group during lunch, he distinctly overheard Maria explaining her perspective on finances. "Every penny counts, and you've got to set priorities," her voice rang out, resonant and firm. Intrigued, yet cautious, Thomas felt a pull toward her. Could this woman, whose daily toil retained a tenderness he struggled to grasp, really shed light on his corporate nightmare? "How would you handle our current crisis?" he blurted out, the question fizzing with audacity. The room froze. The air crackled with tension, disbelief hanging like a specter over the table, faces turning toward him, their surprise palpable. Her eyes widened, as if someone had finally opened a window to let the stale air out. "Well, Mr. Winslow, I'd start by considering everyone's needs," she responded, robust but composed. "Seriously?" He could feel the disbelief radiate from his board members, each judgmental glance sharpening his internal conflict. Was he truly ready to engage with someone he felt was beneath his status? Maria's words carved deeper into him, laying bare the foundations of his values. Here he was, a titan of industry, openly questioning a janitor about the essence of business. The thrill of it was intoxicating, yet there was a growing pit in his stomach. What lay beneath this exchange could threaten everything he built. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The dissent from his executives began to simmer, a palpable anxiety choking the air of the boardroom. They were rattled by his unorthodox approach to leadership, feeling threatened by his newfound empathy and emotion they viewed as weakness. How could he betray the cutthroat philosophies that propelled him to the summit? The looming crisis darkened into desperation, and Thomas found himself standing at a precipice, contemplating a radical shift. Did he dare prioritize the welfare of his employees, a stark divergence from the profit-driven machine he had fashioned? As he and Maria delved deeper into the conversation, it became a refuge for him, yet each insight from her lips twisted his gut with doubt. Maria's passion challenged the very core of his existence, peeling back the layers of his driven ambition to reveal a heart that had long been silenced. Tension mounted, choking his resolve. As night closed in, and clock hands ticked toward a decision, he was caught beneath the weight of a fragile trust he had begun to feel towards Maria. Just as he grasped his own sense of humanity, Maria's phone rang, a call that sent shockwaves through her composure. Her daughter, injured, finances tight, choices confined. Thomas could see the despair choke her light. The race was on. Would he find the courage to invest in the very people who molded the foundation of his success, or protect the very empire he feared was crumbling? Each decision loomed larger than the skyscrapers above, and the clock ticked ominously toward midnight and a reckoning of the heart. The room held its breath as the impact of Maria's distress surged like a tidal wave. Thomas watched her, the stern lines of her face giving way to fractures of anxiety, a glimpse of the human struggle that persisted beneath the polished veneer of corporate existence. Each frantic ring of her phone pierced through his thoughts, the urgency of her daughter's condition twisting within him like a knife. What did it mean for him to stand there, a billionaire poised between mountains of responsibility and a woman who juggled life's challenges with grace? For the first time in months, the figures in the balance sheet ceased to be his only measure of success. Perhaps the true worth of his empire wasn't encapsulated in monetary values but in the very lives it impacted, the very people his decisions consigned to shadows. Maria finally silenced her phone with a trembling hand, her gaze drifting downward. Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice wavering yet resolute, a fierce embodiment of the humility that had always overcome her pride. Thomas felt a fire igniting deep within him. "Don't apologize. You've opened my eyes to something essential," he found himself saying. The words flowed from an unexpected pool of sincerity, and he noticed how Maria's eyes flickered with a glimmer of hope. "Let us understand your approach better. Your insights into the human element of our business. I think we need a shift in perspective." His mind wrestled with a tidal wave of implications. How could he navigate these revelations? The ramifications rippled beyond mere discussion, they beckoned for action, demanding he let go of rigid decisions formulated behind darkened conference doors. "You care about your daughter, about your life. Let us create a way for you to bring that same perspective into this company. We need a plan that reflects the needs of everyone," he asserted, the fervor quaking through him with equal parts fear and excitement. As they exchanged ideas, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that Maria bore the keys to a vital transformation and awakening in recognition of the true heartbeat of the company. In the midst of probing questions and shared revelations, he saw in her not just a janitor, but an integral part of a bigger organism seeking balance. Each time she spoke, he felt something within him expand, he began to unshackle from the shackles of his previous paradigms. Amidst these newfound revelations, Doug's skeptical shadow loomed large. What would his CFO say? Would this be seen as weakness? Offering a lifeline to someone outside his immediate circle might brand him an amateur in the cutthroat world they inhabited. But who was he, Thomas reflected, an opportunist or a leader? Each question stung with its urgency, uneasy yet liberating. "Can we do it?" he inquired, breaking his own silence. "Can we craft a financial model that genuinely cares?" "I believe so, if you're willing to make adjustments for everyone involved," Maria replied, her eyes gleaming with determination. Thomas felt the heat of change pulse through his veins, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. This was the moment, everything hinged on their willingness to challenge the status quo. As they set to work, laying the foundations of a plan reflecting compassion rather than mere profit margins, doubt knotted in Thomas's stomach. He couldn't ignore the risks, nor the potential backlash. Yet for every fearful thought, another one emerged. What if this was the key to redemption not only for Maria but for himself and his company? The clock edged toward midnight. Just beyond the doors, executives congregated, murmuring about uncertainty, unaware of the revolution brewing within these four walls. With a sinking realization, a troubling question loomed in his mind: were they ready for the radical change he was beginning to envision, or would he need to confront the very foundation of his empire? With each tick, the new dawn pushed closer, but an uncertain future lurked, demanding he face the true measure of his leadership. The next step would require courage to embrace the inherent messiness of human experience over calculating ambition, or risk losing everything. As he turned to Maria, ready to embark on this unknown path together, the borders of his world shrank and expanded all at once, a kaleidoscope of possibilities waiting to unfold. Little did he know, the journey would challenge not only his professional acumen but also the essence of who he believed himself to be. "Let us start changing everything," he said, heart racing, wondering whether he was ready for the challenge that lay ahead. Thomas felt a sense of urgency swell within him as he and Maria began drafting a plan that would prioritize compassion alongside their financial objectives. Each idea exchanged between them felt like a building block, forming the basis of something revolutionary. He had spent years immersed in a world defined by cold statistics and cutthroat strategies. Now he stood at the precipice of something vastly different, wrestling with thoughts that challenged everything he knew about leadership. Let's look at this from a different angle, Thomas suggested, grounding his thoughts in the possibilities that lay ahead. He leaned over the whiteboard, skimming through the numbers while intuitive ideas flowed with an unexpected fluency. What if we substituted some profit margins for investments in employee well-being? It may not yield immediate financial returns, but imagine the impact on morale and productivity. Maria met his enthusiasm with her own, her eyes igniting with the fire of newfound ambition. Yes. And we can draft programs that contribute to our employees' families too. That showcases our commitment beyond our profit as a company. We could set up support systems similar to what you implemented for your employees before. The more they spoke, the more Thomas realized how isolated he had been, stubbornly chasing figures while neglecting the emotional fabric that wove their workforce together. Each moment in the room felt like peeling back layers of his old self, revealing a purpose that transcended the clamor of the boardroom. However, the weight of his position pressed heavily as he glimpsed the horizon of resistance he might face. Doubts crept in like shadows from the past. How would Doug perceive this initiative? Was he inviting judgment for conceptualizing such an unorthodox approach? The notion sent tremors through his resolve, forcing him to confront his instinct to shield himself from potential backlash. Are you ready for the pushback? Maria's voice interrupted the cyclone of worries swirling in his mind. This might shake things up at the executive level. You could be seen as soft. Soft? The word struck him, revealing an underlying conviction he hadn't fully acknowledged. In my life, I thought being tough meant being emotionless. Yet when I see someone like you, juggling both compassion and pragmatism, perhaps I've confused strength with a lack of vulnerability. The realization hung in the air, heavy yet liberating. Thomas's heart raced at the profound potential for growth not just for their employees, but for himself. With Maria's guidance, he was unearthing a treasure trove of emotional intelligence he had previously shunned. What if I framed this transformation as a personal pivot? He proposed, allowing a newfound sense of courage to seep through. If criticism comes, I'll take it. But I'm adopting this human-centered model not just for the company's stakeholders but for myself, as a leader who is willing to evolve. Maria nodded, anticipation radiating off her. Exactly. And it will resonate with everyone involved, making them more adaptable to what's coming. As the clock struck 1 in the morning, the vibrant energy of possibility coursed through the room, illuminating the path ahead. They worked late into the night, laughing and brainstorming new initiatives that felt genuine, infusing life back into the corporate machinery that had long been mechanical and lifeless. But as he gazed at the symbols of their burgeoning collaboration, unease clawed at the back of his mind. Would the rest of the executives rally behind him or see him as a naive dreamer? This vulnerability represented a crossroads. The time had come to face the reality of what he was truly willing to risk. It was a moment of reckoning that demanded he shed the protective armor he had built around himself as a billionaire CEO. Thomas inhaled deeply, summoning the conviction that burned bright in his chest. Tomorrow, we present this to the board, he declared, each word a step towards the uncharted territory they were crafting. But within that declaration lay another certainty. He was not just committing to a plan but to an emotional disclosure, opening himself to critique in ways he had never considered before. It was daunting yet incredibly exhilarating, and deep in his bones, he sensed that everything was about to change. With the dawn approaching, Thomas felt the weight of their courageous decision. The real challenge awaited him at the summit where he would stand exposed, facing the scrutiny of his peers who traded in indifference. As a wave of adrenaline surged through him, a new question echoed loudly in his mind: could he truly embrace this transformation while battling the fears that threatened to undermine it? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting in the depths of conviction and courage he had yet to fully discover. Thomas woke up the next morning with a knot of anticipation in his stomach. The tasks leading up to the board presentation loomed large, each detail requiring scrutiny and finesse. He knew he couldn't just present a plan, he needed to articulate a vision. Reflecting on his conversation with Maria, he felt a tremor of excitement and fear, a dynamic he hadn't felt in years. As he stood before his mirror, he rehearsed the points he wanted to address. Each phrase felt like an unwritten song, the melody of his professional evolution beginning to take shape. No longer was he just the numbers-driven executive, he was becoming a leader driven by a newfound sense of empathy. Thomas arrived at the office early, the sun barely cresting over the horizon. He loved the stillness of the building at this hour, as it gave him a moment to collect his thoughts. He sat at his desk, poring over his proposal once more, mindful of every word. How do you encapsulate compassion into a business plan? He recalled how easy it was to slip into the rigidity of corporate life, how many times he had pushed feelings aside in favor of profit. That had served him, but the cost had been high. The faces of the employees he had neglected flashed in his mind like fleeting images from a movie montage. This flip side of leadership, one that acknowledged and embraced vulnerability, was not only necessary, it felt essential. Tom, Maria's voice jolted him back to the moment. She entered with a vibrant energy that clashed beautifully against his brewing storm of anxiety. Are you ready? More than I've ever been, he lied, but he gave her a reassuring smile, wrapping up the lingering doubts tightly like a present. As they walked toward the boardroom, he took stock of his surroundings, noting how familiar yet suffocating these walls felt. They passed the cubicles, their occupants oblivious to the seismic shift that was about to unfold. The reality hit him, this wasn't merely a presentation, it was an unveiling of his inner transformation. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was one of muted conversations and sharpened pencils, executives adjusting their ties and flipping through their notes. He could feel a shift in the room, his peers were already sizing him up, wondering what he had in store. Thomas stood at the helm, beyond the table lined with skeptics, his presence both electrifying and terrifying. Thank you all for being here, he began, his voice steady, but tinged with a passion that surprised even him. Today we're not just discussing a financial plan, we're reinventing the way we perceive value within our company. He felt their eyes on him, some narrowing in disbelief while others widened in curiosity. As he detailed the initiatives he and Maria had crafted, he saw a gradual change in their expressions. Every product and service had its place, but it was the experience they would cultivate for their employees that garnered genuine interest. He painted images of wellness programs, family support systems, and fostering resilience. For too long, he asserted, we've measured success solely in profits, neglecting the people behind those numbers. I believe that by investing in our workforce, we foster an environment that drives productivity, loyalty, and ultimately sustainability. It was too long before the harsh critiques began to surface. Doug, seated at the end of the table, leaned forward, his arms crossed, a skeptical eyebrow raised. Thomas, are you suggesting we prioritize employee well-being over shareholder returns? This sounds idealistic. With the challenge laid bare, Thomas felt a surge of adrenaline, this was it. I understand where you're coming from, Doug. But reimagining our path doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities to shareholders, it means redefining them. Profit can be a byproduct of a happy and engaged workforce. The confrontation shifted into a duel of perspectives, with each question sharpening his resolve. Every defensive brush-off he faced from the executives felt like a challenge to dig deeper into himself, revealing hidden wells of confidence he hadn't known existed. Let me ask you, Doug, he countered, with a newfound boldness. What if our most significant shareholders were our employees? What would this discussion entail then? The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Thomas stood on a precipice he had never approached before, the exhilaration of potential failure curving alongside the possibility of success. He had opened a doorway to a discussion filled with his aspirations and vulnerabilities. As he continued, he sensed the tide turn, more heads nodding in agreement, eyes glimmering with understanding. Still, remnants of doubt hovered like specters behind their expressions. What would happen after this meeting? Leaving the boardroom, Thomas felt a complex blend of adrenaline and relief course through him. He had laid bare his vision, standing at the edge of a sea of uncertainty. But as he glanced back at the closed doors, a thought struck him. Did he truly believe in his vision enough to stand firm against the inevitable backlash, or was this just the beginning of a fight for change? The answer lay deeper than he had anticipated, waiting within a place he still needed to navigate. The challenge was only just manifesting. Would he possess the fortitude to champion this shift, amidst the weight of opposition? The real test was yet to come. Thomas leaned against the wall outside the boardroom, hands buried deep in his pockets, feeling the weight of uncertain futures cling to him like a second skin. He had stirred the pot, igniting conversations that simmered with potential, yet the knowledge of possible pushback coiled in his gut. The room had wavered on the brink of a new understanding, but he felt the undercurrent of skepticism still thrumming beneath the surface. "Tom," Maria's voice broke into his thoughts as she approached, the earlier vibrancy now tempered with concern. "Did they buy it?" he asked, voice low as if awed by the mere potential of the moment. "Some of them," she replied, weighing her words. "But Doug, he will rally the others. You need to prepare for it." Preparing. The word echoed ominously in his mind. He recalled his own reluctance to delve into this new realm of leadership, one that embraced compassion and connection rather than authority and distance. It was a challenging dance, merging profit with purpose. He took a deep breath. "What if we could find unexpected allies?" "What do you mean?" "Not everyone needs to be convinced immediately. What if I reach out to those who inherently understand the balance between humanity and business?" "Who do you have in mind?" Maria raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "The janitorial staff," he said, his brow furrowing with the spontaneity of the thought. "They often see the human elements we overlook. They see the workers, the people. Maybe their insights can help flesh out a more rounded approach." Maria's expression shifted, her skepticism turning into a contemplative smile. "That's unorthodox, Tom. But it could work. They interact with the employees across all levels. Someone might have a valuable perspective." His mind raced as he considered the challenges ahead. Sure, reaching out to the janitors was a raw and open move, but it also felt like the right one, allowing him to approach his goal from a more grounded perspective. Determined, he walked through the office with renewed energy, searching for a familiar face among the custodial staff. He spotted Lisa, a woman known for her sharp insights and remarkable organizational skills, often overlooked yet revered among her peers. "Hey, Lisa," he began, unable to mask his enthusiasm. "Can we chat for a moment?" Her puzzled look was quickly chased away by curiosity. "Sure, Thomas. What's this about?" "I'm looking for honest feedback as I push for a change in our workplace culture. I want to know how we're doing on the ground level, from your perspective. What would you like to see in our programs?" She hesitated, her brow furrowing. Perhaps she was unused to being asked for her opinion by someone in his position. "I think some of us feel disconnected from the decision makers. Our concerns about morale and environment often get overlooked. Employees get stressed, and that translates to how we all feel. A healthier culture could go a long way." Her words resonated with him, illuminating the vulnerability he had sensed in the boardroom. He realized that this wasn't merely a professional initiative, it was intensely personal. "What about ideas for team building?" he pressed. "What could bridge gaps? Something simple but profound, like regular open forums or mingles. We clean up the workplace but also the atmosphere. Let everyone share a meal and talk." In that moment, Thomas's vision started taking tangible shape, fueled by genuine perspectives outside of the boardroom. He felt transformed, moving further along the path toward true leadership while grounded in the fundamental ethos of empathy. He returned to his office with Lisa's insights blooming in his mind. He suddenly felt an invigorating sense of direction far beyond the confines of the conference room, bolstered by a reservoir of voices he had yet to fully engage. Will this unconventional approach resonate amid the challenges ahead? As he began to draft an email outlining a company-wide forum idea, the lingering doubt remained: was he prepared for the possible backlash this shift could invite? The horizon of his journey began to shimmer with promise, but shadows of uncertainty loomed still. Behind every innovation lay the potential for resistance, and he had yet to find out just how far he was willing to go. The next step demanded more resolve than he could anticipate, testing his commitment to this new vision. Would he embrace the risk of potential ridicule for alignment with a vision that challenged the very nature of corporate ethos? The sound of keystrokes echoed softly in Thomas's office as he crafted the email. Each word felt disproportionate to the magnitude of the change he was proposing. He hesitated before pressing send, the weight of potential discord heavy on his shoulders. Connecting with the janitorial staff, opting for community over hierarchy, it was bold, but was he ready for the implications? He stared at the screen, the blinking cursor taunting him. Around him, the office buzzed with the normal rhythm of corporate life, oblivious to the seismic shift he was attempting to initiate. How could mere words convey the urgency he felt? "We need this," he murmured under his breath, convincing himself even as a knot twisted his stomach. Just as he was about to press send, Doug's figure loomed in his peripheral vision. Thomas's heart sank. The man moved with a purpose, and every confident step seemed to amplify doubts lurking in Thomas's mind. Doug's reputation for being a staunch traditionalist preceded him, and Thomas braced for the impending confrontation. "Is it true you're reaching out to the janitors for feedback?" Doug's voice dripped with incredulity. Unflinching, Thomas met Doug's steely gaze. "Yes, I believe there are valuable insights to be gained." Doug scoffed and folded his arms. "And what makes you think they have any clue about our business operations or strategic goals? This is exactly why we should keep things at the top level. You're risking everything throwing ideas around like that." A part of Thomas recoiled at the dismissal. For a moment, anger flared within him, the voice whispering that he should concede, retreating back to the safety of convention. Yet another voice, more resolute, reminded him of the essence of leadership he was striving for: courage, empathy, and authenticity. "Doug, I understand your concerns, but that's precisely the point. We can't afford to ignore perspectives that lie outside our typical decision-making circles." It was awkward, assertive yet uncertain. He felt the need to defend his position more than he relished it. "The last thing we need is a focus group of janitors telling us how to run this place," Doug countered. "That's where you're wrong. The disconnect isn't just about structure, it's about culture. If we want to inspire engagement and trust, we need to understand the human element," Thomas shot back, a rush of adrenaline now fueling his voice. Doug, momentarily taken aback, shifted uncomfortably. The silence stretched as their eyes locked in a battle of wills. Thomas could see the wheels turning in Doug's head, a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Let's say you go through with this forum," Doug said slowly, now considering the idea rather than outright dismissing it. "What if it backfires? What ensures you don't end up with a chaotic mess?" "I plan to structure the discussions, set the tone for constructive feedback," Thomas replied, conviction solidifying his stance. "This isn't about undermining leadership, it's about fostering a culture where everyone feels valued. We need to elevate our engagement beyond departmental silos." Doug snorted softly but lingered, his expression unreadable. "You might want to be careful, Tom. Innovation without insight can lead straight into a pit. Or it can lead us to unforeseen opportunities," Thomas shot back, feeling emboldened. The conversation closed with Doug's dismissive wave as he retreated down the hallway. But his words hung in the air, leaving Thomas with the sharp edge of uncertainty. What did he really know about the fallout of this proposed initiative? With new resolve, he completed his email and pressed send. As the message disappeared into the digital ether, he realized the game was just beginning. The ball was now rolling, but questions cluttered his mind. What if the janitorial staff had insights that could truly reshape their corporate culture? Would his gamble pay off, or was he on the brink of making a costly mistake? He leaned back in his chair, the weight of the laptop pressing against him like an unrelenting reminder of the risk he had undertaken. Change was in motion, but he could feel the ripples it created, each one a reminder of the stakes involved. Would he have the fortitude to navigate the backlash that could arise from challenging the established order? Thomas's journey was about to plunge into chaos, and he resolved to remain steadfast amidst the storm. The fevered anticipation of the unknown lay ahead, but would he stand firm when the inevitable tide of opposition rolled in? The following morning, a sense of heightened anticipation buzzed in Thomas's office. For the first time in weeks, he felt an unsettling mix of excitement and apprehension as he prepared for the first forum with the janitorial staff. Would they show up? What would they say? How would he ensure the session was productive amidst the uncertain energy? As 10 a.m. approached, he paced in his office, reviewing his notes, mentally sharpening the questions he planned to pose. He envisioned a thriving discussion that could foster meaningful innovation, but the very prospect felt daunting. Could he strike the right balance between being a leader and a peer? When he heard a light knock on the door, his heart raced. He opened it to find Nancy, a longtime member of the janitorial team, standing there with a small group. The unassuming team members wore expressions that oscillated between curiosity and skepticism. "Hey, we know you wanted to talk about something this morning," she said, adjusting her glasses, seemingly scanning the atmosphere like an eager student. "Absolutely. Please, come in," Thomas replied, gesturing them into the conference room. He quickly set up chairs, arranging them in a loose circle, hoping for openness in the dialogue. As they settled in, he felt a weight of responsibility descend upon him. He introduced himself and laid out the purpose of their gathering, his hands clasped on the table to steady his nerves. "Your insights matter greatly to us. This company thrives because of our collective efforts, and understanding your experiences can help us improve our workplace culture." The silence that followed felt like a heavy cloud, filled with unspoken doubts. Thomas's palms grew clammy, he sensed the tension coiling within the room. Suddenly, Nancy broke it with a half-smile, "So you're telling us we're here to school the big shots on how to keep the place clean?" Laughter rippled through the group, breaking the ice. Thomas chuckled along, appreciating the levity, but then zeroed in on the participants' expressions. "It's more than that. We're looking to learn about what you guys see every day, how things are running on the ground and where we can improve. Please, just share openly." The next hour unfolded surprisingly well, with participants offering candid, sometimes humorous feedback. They spoke of neglected areas, safety concerns, and their observations of employee interactions. Their voices filled the room, their comfort level visibly rising with every shared thought. As Thomas listened intently, he discovered nuggets of wisdom embedded in their stories, instances where simplicity hid depth, and where day-to-day operations were laden with opportunities for change he had never considered. A janitor mentioned, "Sometimes it's the little things, a broken stair railing or a flickering light, that mess with morale. If those get fixed, everything else just feels better." That statement struck a chord in Thomas. It was easy to overlook these seemingly minor details when absorbed in strategy meetings, but recognizing their implications revealed a blind spot in company culture. It dawned on him that leadership didn't just stem from high-level insights but from addressing foundational issues that affected everyone's daily experience. As the forum wrapped up, Thomas felt a sense of connection that had been absent before. He glanced at their faces, which now radiated a blend of pride and acknowledgement. They hadn't just contributed to a discussion, they had fostered a new line of communication essential for cultivating trust. However, as they began to gather their things, the tension unexpectedly returned. One of the younger janitors, Brian, hesitated as he stared at Thomas. "I've got a concern, though. What happens to what we shared here?" Thomas's breath caught. It was a raw, potent question laced with vulnerability. "I assure you, it will be taken seriously. But I need your help to keep this dialogue ongoing." Brian nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting skepticism. "I hope you do, but it's hard to believe that sometimes." The unease lingered as he watched them leave, and Thomas found himself spiraling into introspection. What if he could truly transform this dialogue into action and not just waste the significant trust they had placed in him? As he mulled these thoughts, Doug's warning echoed in his mind: innovation without insight can lead straight into a pit. Would he have the tenacity to integrate the voices of the forgotten into the corporate narrative? His journey had only just begun, but he sensed the ground beneath him shifting. As he returned to his desk, a wave of resolve washed over him. He would not allow this opportunity to slip away. He would forge ahead, but the ramifications of that decision could be profound. What awaited him in the aftermath of this awakening? Would others in the upper echelons embrace these insights, or would they shut him down? Filled with renewed determination, he wrote down the key takeaways from the forum, aware that the real challenge was still forthcoming. The time had come to face the inevitable resistance, but more pressingly, would he remain true to the ideals he had just begun to embrace? The hum of the fluorescent lights felt more oppressive to Thomas as he sat at his desk, the weight of the recent forum pressing on his mind. He glanced at the notes he'd taken, each point bursting with possibilities, yet the nagging fear of potential backlash from upper management simmered beneath the surface. Would they appreciate the insights he intended to champion, or would they scoff at the voices of the janitorial staff? Determined to bridge the gap he now recognized, Thomas crafted an email to his superior, outlining the themes raised in the forum. He prepared for anticipated skepticism by emphasizing actionable outcomes, investing in minor repairs, enhancing workplace communication, and fostering a culture of recognition for overlooked roles. Every keystroke trembled with doubt, yet he pressed on, driven by the inadvertent vow he'd made to Brian. As he clicked send, the familiar sensation of unease returned. Would his words disappear into the corporate ether, or would they spark the necessary dialogue? Thomas rose from his chair and walked to the break room, seeking solace in caffeine. He found Nancy and a few of her colleagues sharing quiet laughter over coffee. Excited by the prospect of building on their previous conversation, Thomas joined them, diffusing his anxiety with curiosity. "Hey, I'm planning to launch a follow-up discussion next week to build on what we talked about. Any thoughts on how we can make it even more effective?" he asked, leaning forward. Their reactions mirrored the initial tensions from the previous forum, but gradually, they opened up. Ideas for structured feedback sessions emerged, and Nancy suggested they could even make a direct approach to management for quicker responses. Thomas felt buoyed by their enthusiasm and realized he had a burgeoning support system, one not positioned in the boardroom but firmly grounded in the everyday reality of their workplace. Yet, moments of lucidity often reveal harder truths. As Thomas chuckled with them, he couldn't shake the image of Brian's skepticism, reminding him of how fragile this newfound alliance was. Fostering trust required more than dialogue, it demanded tangible results. Returning to his office, Thomas decided to circulate a brief survey among the janitorial staff to gauge their priorities. Gathering insights in a documented format felt like it could help reinforce their collective stance, providing a beacon of credibility as he faced resistance from his peers. But pulling it together meant addressing potential fallout from management, which weighed heavily on his mind. Later that evening, as he sifted through research on workplace dynamics, Thomas stumbled upon an article dissecting the significance of frontline employee feedback in corporate strategy. The statistics were staggering. Companies embracing input from all tiers showed increased efficiency and morale. This could work, he murmured to himself. But doubt crept in again. Was his eagerness to advocate for change naive? What if those statistics were mere anomalies? Every narrative he read emphasized the importance of alignment between leadership vision and employee insights, yet the gap remained incredibly vast in his reality. The key dilemma circled back to his values. Did he have the courage to stand alone in making a case for an often ignored segment of their workforce, knowing it could cost him professionally? The vision of his career shattering under scrutiny loomed larger. Then, a voice disrupted his spiraling thoughts. It was Doug, sidling into Thomas's office with a casual stroll that belied the seriousness of his remark. "I heard about your little meeting with the janitors. Optimistic, are we?" Digging through the layers of sarcasm, Thomas sensed Doug's genuine skepticism. People matter, Doug. Their insights could lead to real change, not just pretty pictures on a PowerPoint slide. Doug's eyes narrowed, a glimmer of something unreadable passing through. Careful, Tom. Blind optimism can land you in hot water. You really think they can contribute anything of merit? The question hung there, thick and unyielding. Thomas's heart pounded in response. He felt cornered, as though the facade of his burgeoning resolve was about to shatter. The stakes were growing higher with every word exchanged. With a calm he didn't quite feel, Thomas replied, I know they can. But I can't do it alone. As Doug left, a wave of uncertainty washed over Thomas. He had aimed to elevate others, but now he pondered whether he had the strength to confront a possibly hostile reception among his peers. Would he champion the overlooked or retreat into safety? This tension seeped into his routine, threatening to dissolve the momentum he'd built. Awareness of the challenges ahead melded with a tempered anticipation. With the survey in motion, and deliberations in play, it was just a matter of time before he was called to account for his choices. Faced with mounting pressure, Thomas needed to solidify his commitments and prepare for inevitable pushback. What awaited him when he laid his vision bare before the cautious leadership team? Would they embrace his plans, or would he find himself fighting alone against indifference? The answers were looming ever closer, and with them, the possibility for both personal and professional transformation. In the days following his conversation with Doug, a tightened resolve settled within Thomas. The impending survey loomed over him, demanding clarity and purpose. Each question he crafted felt like a direct confrontation with the fears that had coursed through him since he first stepped into this role. Would the janitorial staff feel empowered to share their thoughts, or would he inadvertently stifle their voices, reinforcing the very hierarchies he sought to dismantle? Sitting at his desk, Thomas meticulously reviewed the draft of the survey. He had intentionally paired open-ended questions with quantitative ratings, aiming to strike a delicate balance between structured feedback and the raw honesty he craved. As he typed, he envisioned the potential ripple effects, how one response might be the catalyst for a broader dialogue, reshaping not just the workplace environment but also his own professional trajectory. But doubt crept in uninvited. How would his peers respond when they learned he had sought input from those often ignored? Would management view the initiative as a waste of resources or, worse, as a challenge to their authority? Each scenario flashed in his mind, conjuring images of whispered conversations and side-eyed glances around the office coffee machine. Yet, as reminders of Brian's earnest dedication surfaced, any hesitation he felt was replaced by determination. The janitors, who often toiled away in the shadows, deserved this opportunity to shine. They had insights that Thomas had begun to learn were integral to the organization's success. Shoving aside his fears, he hit send. With the survey circulating, a sense of anticipation mingled with dread took its place. The responses dripped in slowly, each one telling a fragment of a larger story. Thomas spent hours compiling and analyzing, connecting dots he hadn't seen before. Many responses echoed themes of recognition, which had remained overshadowed by the dominant corporate narrative focused solely on profit margins and productivity metrics. Among the replies, he discovered a few voices that stood out, a determined clarity that forced him to confront a new reality. One comment stated, "We see the space you manage every day, we have ideas about how to make it work better for us." Another read, "Not just machines and supplies, we are people too." These were not the voices of the overlooked, they were bold declarations of worth. It was an awakening, one that reframed everything he thought he understood about leadership and communication. Yet doubt twisted tighter in his gut. Was he ready to stand against the status quo, potentially igniting backlash? Thomas roamed the break room a few days later, the survey results still fresh in his mind. He spotted Nancy, her laughter piercing the tension that had taken residence in his heart. Approaching cautiously, he broached the subject of their upcoming discussion. "I'm thinking of sharing some insights from the survey with management. Do you think it's too soon? Should I prepare for the worst?" Nancy leaned against the counter, her expression shifting from amusement to focus. "You're doing this for all of us, right?" sharing what we need. If that's your goal, you have to push through the fear. The worst they can do is say no, but the best. It might just lead to real change. Her encouragement resonated deeply. Taking a breath, Thomas acknowledged that retreating into silence would betray not only himself but everyone who had trusted him to represent their voices. The thought of being the advocate birthed a new urgency in him. He needed to prepare, to articulate not just data but the emotional currents that flowed through those figures. With a fresh perspective, Thomas organized his thoughts into a presentation that would feel more like a conversation than a submission. He steered clear of jargon, focusing instead on anecdotes gleaned from the janitorial staff's insights and weaving them into actionable proposals. As he rehearsed in the mirror, he could see the man he hoped to become, one who practiced active listening and demanded respect for all roles within the company. Yet, with the leadership meeting drawing closer, an unsettling churn of anxiety bubbled beneath his resolve. What would happen when his colleagues realized their comfort zone was being challenged? That night, while scrolling through the responses again, he paused at one last reply: "We want to be part of the team. We have something to offer." Their trust, he realized, was fragile yet potent, filled with potential. It could either empower him or become a vulnerability exploited by those more resistant to change. The day of the meeting arrived with an uneasy silence in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. Thomas took a deep breath, reminding himself that the moment had come not just to push against the doubt that surrounded him but to embrace the collective hope of those who had inspired him. As he walked into the conference room, determination flickered within him. The time had come to face not just management, but his own insecurities. Would he successfully usher in a new narrative, or would this pivotal moment turn into another crushing defeat? The stakes had never been higher, and uncertainty clung to him like a shadow as he prepared to speak. Thomas entered the boardroom, where the executive team waited, the air thick with a cocktail of skepticism and anticipation. He stood at the head of the table, a role that had once felt like a mantle too heavy to bear. Today, however, something had shifted within him. Gone was the timid CEO, replaced by a leader ready to acknowledge the human elements that underpinned every piece of his empire. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady and resolute. He sat the survey results in front of him, determined not to engage in the usual performance of corporate presentations. Instead, he sought genuine dialogue, casting aside the layers of formality to speak from the heart. There's been a narrative within this company that we've overlooked the voices of our frontline workers. Recently, I've met with our janitorial team to understand their perspectives on our workplace. Their insights have illuminated aspects of our culture that we've neglected. The expressions around the table ranged from confusion to outright disapproval, but he pressed on, bolstered by the very trust these employees had invested in him. He referenced anecdotes from the surveys, articulating stories of overlooked contributions to the company, and framing them not as complaints but as invitations for growth. One powerful story pierced the surface tension of the room. When Lisa pointed out that a flickering light often affects morale, she wasn't just talking about a bulb, she highlighted how the environment influences productivity and overall well-being. That's not just maintenance, that's recognizing the humanity in our workspace. He watched their reactions, striking a balance between exposure and vulnerability. As he unveiled the tangible changes that could result from the input they had shared, workplace improvements, recognition programs, and initiatives centered on community, he noted a shift, the skeptical frown starting to ease into contemplative nods. Doug chimed in, prodding, "But what about the financial implications? Can we afford to focus on these sentiments? Perhaps the real question is, what is the cost of neglecting the sentiments?" Thomas shot back. "This isn't about softening our bottom line, it's about enhancing it through commitment to our people. Investing in employee satisfaction leads to retention, productivity, and overall organizational resilience. Genuine trust will translate into profitability." A murmur of acknowledgement spun through the room. Their apprehensions weren't completely dissipated, but they were now perfectly matched with curiosity. Could a people-first approach redefine their success metrics? As he presented actionable points for pilot initiatives, he felt a weight lift. This was no longer just a presentation, it was a culmination of his transformation. Each proposal held a pledge to forge an environment where the collective voices could propel innovation. Let us commit to hosting an ongoing forum, a conversation with all members of our staff to ensure feedback doesn't end with this meeting. Let us bridge gaps between levels of hierarchy, ignite collaboration, and invest in what makes this company thrive. As he finished, silence enveloped the room, followed by a flurry of thoughts. Thoughts of cautious enthusiasm and lingering doubt meshed with invigorated challenges from his peers. Slowly, Doug stood, arms uncrossed now, his expression thoughtful. "I can see the potential here, Thomas," he admitted, though the reservations lingered in his tone. "However, actual implementation will require a robust strategy to accompany this vision." For a moment, the words felt charged. Thomas seized it as an opening. "That's precisely my point. We cannot create a system that works without the knowledge of those who navigate the environment, and it's going to take effort from every level within this company." Over the session, Thomas witnessed the metamorphosis of hesitant skepticism into a genuine conversation about next steps. By the end of the meeting, agreements formed, plans outlined, and for the first time, his colleagues were ready to extend their hands instead of arms crossed defensively. Emerging from the conference room, Thomas felt a notable lightness in his chest. The journey had only begun, but as he walked down the hallway, he found his mind swirling with excitement and relief. He could hear Brian's words echoing through his thoughts: "We want to be part of the team. We have something to offer." He felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over him. By choosing compassion and engagement, he had stirred the latent potential embedded within the organization. Transformative change had taken root, not just for the janitorial staff but also for himself. Thomas Winslow had become more than a CEO, he was a bridge builder, uniting diverse voices to create a cohesive, thriving work culture. And in that moment, as he strolled toward his office, Thomas understood that he had conquered a crucial battle, a clear declaration that he would lead with empathy, transforming not only the company but his own sense of purpose in every decision going forward. This was his moment of true achievement, and he would nurture it fiercely. Now is your chance to take a moment of action. You need to subscribe now to our channel, ensuring you don't miss our next exclusive emotional stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to feed that algorithm and show you care about powerful narratives of overcoming challenges. Comment below with your reactions and theories about today's transformative journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ultimate conclusion of personal and professional growth. Your support makes a world of difference.